we feel that more and more young people are hiding their breakouts. They are either putting a pimple patch on top of it, using filters across different social channels to hide them. And by creating this poor playground around breakouts, we're hoping to, bring them to people's attention in a positive light, basically.
That is Rita Silva, Senior Manager of Scientific Communications and Brand Engagement at beauty brand Deciem. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Create Tomorrow podcast. I'm your host, Cassandra Napoli, Head of Consumer Forecasting at WGSN. Every 2 weeks, I will take you on a journey to examine how trends are translated into aesthetics and product design. In this episode, we hear from Rita Silva. We discuss the growing consumer demand for transparency, ingredient literacy, and evidence-based messaging, and why designing communication that makes complex science accessible has become essential for building trust. Rita, can you briefly share who you are, what you do, and a bit about your career journey so far?
So my name is Rita Silva, and I am a Science Communications and Brand Engagement Senior Manager for Deciem. Some of you may know us as the makers of The Ordinary, Neod, Avastan, Loofah. And I've been in the company for around 9 years now. I'm actually a cosmetic scientist. I studied an MSc in cosmetic science at University of the Arts in London. And because I've been with Deciem for so long, I really, really know our early adopting consumers inside out. And in my role, I focus in communicating the science, all the scientific storytelling around our products, all of our formulations, the ingredients that go into them, and making them digestible, not only for the skintellectuals, but also for everyone that wants to get into the ordinary.
Can you walk us through a typical day in the life? Because I feel like it's not every day we hear from a cosmetic scientist. It feels like it could be quite a niche area of expertise. So what does a typical day in the life look like?
So the scientific communications team, alongside the applied research team and the research and development team, were basically the trio that is responsible for the development of the concepts around our products. And then we, SciComs, we take it away and we develop the scientific storytelling of those products. I also work a lot with our brand communications, product marketing teams, social media teams as well, just to make sure that all the communication that we put out there is scientifically sound. They pick my brains a lot about how to inject some science into our marketing and everything that we do. So we truly could look so different from one day to another. One day I could be researching scientific papers all day long, and another day I could be hosting a podcast or, doing a masterclass. It really changes.
So interesting. We had a climate communications expert on last year on the podcast. And I think this is quite similar, where you're sort of decoding some of the more, particulars, the scientific elements of things, and translating that into the masses who, your audience, not everyone is as intellectual as you said. There is a bit of a learning curve, perhaps. So you are really tasked with translating some really complex things into easily digestible kind of content that makes sense to the masses. And that seems like no easy feat, I would imagine.
People want to know what they're putting on their faces. They want to know about the science of the ingredients, the science of the skincare concerns that they're having. So I find myself having to create content for a skintellectual one day, and then having to simplify really complex topics to the general consumer and still making it understandable. And one thing that I'm always saying is that science is not black and white. It's full of gray areas, and the truth usually is in the gray areas. And trying to communicate the gray in a 30-second TikTok video is so difficult. So it really is a lot of, teamwork with our brand team, our social media team, really that collaboration that creates what the ordinary is. And if the collaboration between the teams that are more consumer facing and the scientists didn't exist, we just wouldn't be able to remain accurate in a way that we do.
Do you think that in the near future, probably, that sort of every brand is going to have to be operating in this way? The fact that you would need people with credentials, scientific backgrounds, cosmetic scientists like yourself, to kind of decode, because I think we live in a world where greenwashing, it's everywhere. And a lot of brands have have been adopting green hushing as a result, not talking about their sustainability. So do you think that every marketing team is sort of going to have, people with credentials?
If brands that portray themselves as science forward and science focused are not already relying on experts that have a scientific background, then they're doing this themselves a disservice. I feel like the consumer nowadays is basically that their trust is essential to have your products being successful. And gaining that trust, it becomes harder and harder nowadays, especially in this post-truth society that we live in. So it truly is something essential, not just from a credentialing perspective, but also to ensure that the information that you're putting out there cannot come back to bite you, basically.
How do you avoid the sort of misuse or misinterpretation, or maybe the misrepresentation of the content that you're putting out, particularly the scientific information? How are you vetting that information? What checks and balances are in place?
In cosmetics, for example, I see it all the time that old facts are being shared as current facts. For example, the fact that, it's not a fact, that physical sunscreen filters are reflecting light. They actually absorb light and convert it into heat. And this was found years ago. I would think more than 2 decades ago, but it's still being shared on social media today, which is insane.
So the Ordinary in particular is really known for being radically transparent in terms of labeling. Um, from that regard, do you think that the consumer becomes more informed, and does the marketer have a responsibility to sort of educate the consumer in that way?
Absolutely. I think that educating the consumer is something that is just not a necessity anymore. It's an asset. There's actually been market researches that have found that an educated consumer will be a loyal consumer in the long run. And building that relationship of trust with the consumer is so important. I think that a lot of the time, especially nowadays that everything is so fast and we're being bombarded with so many brands and so many things to buy, it really is the desire of probably every company to become a legacy brand, a brand that everyone recognizes that they are going to pass on to their children as a brand to trust, something that to go for something reliable. And I know that this is a wish of the Ordinary to become a legacy brand, to be a brand that is trusted and recognized by multiple generations, not just by the youth. So yeah, it's definitely super important to educate, to create that trust and that relationship with the consumer.
How do you know which one, which brand to go to and which one to trust? Is there a risk in maybe over educating or too much information, sort of inundating the consumer?
Absolutely. I mean, not everyone wants to go out there and do a 10-step skincare routine, right? Uh, it's something that it started in a very niche community and then it started to make its way out into the masses, but it's not something that is sustainable for everyone to maintain forever. As a brand, even though we do have a lot to choose from, we have a lot of products. We are not and will never be trying to sell 10 products to one person. We always try to keep our education really personal, and it's about that one person's own skincare concerns. But we do understand that there's currently an overload of information, and it can get to a point that you see so many different things you don't do anything. You won't buy anything because there's far too much to choose from.
You get sort of numb to it. I
Yeah.
mean, I have got my consumer hat on right now, and like, going on TikTok, it's telling me things I didn't even know I had to worry about on my face, and it's just become too much, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. We definitely try to not fall into that trap. And we do know that we have a lot to choose from. So our desire and our focus when we are designing education and, social media content and even our website is to simplify small chunks of information that are digestible. There are basically a simple guidance for a consumer to choose the best products for them rather than just buying something because they've seen it on a quick video and it went viral and they think they might need it.
Yeah. The best example, I always give this example, is this young woman who's probably younger than me, was worrying about her marionette lines, which are like your smile lines, right? And I was like, why are we worrying about smile lines? Smiling means that you were happy at one point. You have smile lines because you were joyful. And so it was like all these products that you need. And I was just like, no, like I can't go down that road. But I imagine for a young person or a skintellectual person, like it could become quite overwhelming to kind of keep up with it all. So to kind of decide which trends, I guess that's kind of my question is like, how do you decide which skincare worries are worthy of investing in from an educational perspective as a brand?
For us, that's something that's super important because we are always seeing trends that, everyone wants us to jump on. Let's create a product for glass skin. Let's create a product for that thing. And we only jump on that trend when it goes beyond a trend and it becomes an established desire amongst consumers. And it is also achievable through a scientifically sound approach. So, for example, with glass skin, which is essentially light reflection, if we look at the science of light reflection, it's basically just smoothness. And with smoothness comes light reflection. And so we know that by exfoliating and plumping and hydrating, we're going to achieve a smoother surface. So that's where we enter. We enter with that education of like, this is not some secret potion that's going to make you look like a glazed donut. It's science. And it's achievable to a fault, of course. Let's be realistic. And we've seen the consumer asking for it for so long, that everyone wants to have super glossy skin, that we are ready to communicate, okay, this is how you can achieve this with our products. But we didn't just jump on it with the first product that we thought could be the suitable for that trend. We actually went and looked at the science of what makes skin super glossy.
See, that's really interesting. That is about designing beyond the trend cycle. And I think that is so important. And that's what you guys do really well, I think, is like there are so many trends, the glazed donut trend, the glass skin trend, the dewy trend. Like there's loads of sort of micro trends within, the makeup and skincare world that feel like maybe, marketers latch onto really quickly, but really it's not about that. It's sort of refining your approach and figuring out what's the science, what's actually going to stay, what's long lasting, what's not a fad. And what you just said, I think is beautiful. How do you design for different levels of knowledge? So I mentioned I'm into skincare, but I'm not necessarily like max intellectual. Whereas like I have a really good friend who does a 13-step skincare routine. We are not on the same level. Like I want simplicity. She wants, perfection. So how do you design for people who are, or communicate rather, for people who are at different levels in terms of skin intelligence?
A lot of collaboration, honestly, and a lot of teamwork. I think that and thinking about all of those different levels of consumer, of course, we can't forget our skintellectuals because they're the ones that build us from the ground up and made us the popular brand that we are today. But we also can't alienate the general consumer because they are genuinely interested in us and we're so happy to have them. So when we're developing a campaign, whether it is for a new product development or something more evergreen, we really have the two and even more layers of consumer expertise in mind. We also adapt to different platforms. For example, in Reddit, you have your experts. They are going to ask you the hardest questions. So we love to host AMAs, Ask Me Anythings, on Reddit. And either I host it or someone else in my team or another scientist in our team, because we know that the Reddit consumer will want the scientists there answering all of those difficult questions, right? Whereas when it comes to TikTok, people prefer a quick, fun video with maybe some education, but mostly just something, snappy, fun, engaging. So for that environment, we definitely have in mind that we need to summarize the most important concepts and make sure that we still stay true to the accuracy whilst also from having that consumer in mind and how they consume content on TikTok in mind.
I was going to ask about Reddit because Reddit feels like the most interesting area in terms of beauty communication at the moment. I feel like there's something to anonymity online. Like people feel safer being able to kind of express questions or express interest in a topic when they're hiding behind, it's like sort of faceless. And so I think like there, especially amongst young people today, could feel quite intimidating entering the skincare market because it is so robust. It's quite layered. It can be an overwhelming space. So to have Reddit AMAs, I feel like is so important. What else are you guys doing on Reddit to capture that beauty interest? Because it is booming in that platform.
Absolutely. Well, I think the AMAs are our main focus. We also do a lot of just background watching. We're definitely watching what people are talking about. For every campaign, I myself go into Reddit a lot to see what people are saying about the topic of the skincare concern that we're trying to target, for example, or products that are in the same vein of a product that we have that's upcoming. Even what people are saying about our existing products. We've had instances where we have had reformulations of products because consumers weren't 100% happy about the product. And yes, we also took comments in our social media channels into consideration, even reviews that they leave on our website, but also Reddit. Reddit was a huge guide because you have this huge bank of people just talking amongst themselves about things that they love or do not love about products. And that was a huge source of information for us, for sure.
How do you decipher between sort of educating the consumer, as we've been discussing, but then influencing the consumer? Because it can get a little dicey, I think.
I think there's a big difference between educating, which is you're just empowering the consumer to making an informed decision when they're purchasing a product, and then influencing, where you're telling them that they need to fix something that maybe they didn't know they needed to fix. You're telling them that they need this product immediately, even if they don't have that particular skincare concern. We try to stay away from that more aggressive influencing. We definitely communicate to all of the content creators that we work with, press, etc., to share their honest opinions. We prefer content that feels and looks organic to content that overhypes our products. We've even come out and said and made statements that some overhyped statements about our products were not true. For example, people were calling our volufiline an injectable in a bottle. And we were not aligned with that because it's a cosmetic product, it's not an injectable. So we actually came out and said, listen, this is not something that we endorse.
That aligns with a lot of the trends we've been talking about in our marketing content, which is about accountability and being quite honest and transparent, and really owning when, you missed the mark. But you guys in this case didn't miss the mark. You're just telling, us as consumers that actually what is being said isn't true, which I think is a real big shift. We don't necessarily see that. I think a lot of people would say that's good press. Whereas you guys have come out and said that's not true, and you're sort of holding your products accountable. And I think that's refreshing in a trend-driven environment.
We have to, because our community, they are so hard on us in the best way possible. But our hardcore fans, they will hold us accountable before anything. And I know when a piece of content is sponsored by us directly, or is just someone using an affiliate link on TikTok and making overhyped claims, but a lot of people don't know the difference. So sometimes I do think that we are endorsing content that we truly aren't.
It's interesting. I want to sort of shift gears a little bit and talk about the playful marketing that you guys do. A lot of the really great marketing that kind of cuts through is a bit shocking, perhaps, these days. It touches on a macro trend at WGSN, which we call play power, which is kind of humorous and maybe a little bit meta in a way, looking at the world around us and commenting on it through your marketing campaigns. A few that come to mind: the Poor Playground in South Korea, and then most recently the $175 banana that was on sale.
Yes.
Can you talk us through a little bit about why The Ordinary kind of experiments with these playful, kind of kitschy campaigns, and what your role is in this?
The Poor Playground was super fun. I think that was one that we were involved in by advising on how to create the Poor Playground in a scientifically sound way while still keeping it fun. So the brand team comes to us with their idea, and we're basically there telling them that's not what a poor looks like. You need to redesign this thing, and also helping them with educational assets. So you go into the Poor Playground, and yes, it's super fun, but you actually will find education there. And that's where we come in. We help the team create those educational assets so that the experience is not just something that's viral and cute to put on your Instagram stories, is also something where you will learn about acne. We wanted to make this Poor Playground campaign super playful, especially because we feel that more and more young people are hiding their breakouts. They are either putting a pimple patch on top of it, using filters across different social channels to hide them. And by creating this Poor Playground around breakouts, we're hoping to, bring them to people's attention in a positive light, basically.
But I was going to ask a little bit about Gen Alpha because we've heard so much recently in the last couple of years about how Gen Alpha is rising into like the core youth consumer. I think the eldest is about 15 this year. So in the next couple of years, they're really going to be rising in their power and their spending power. Um, Obviously, play speaks to Gen Alpha quite a bit. I think the poor playground, that's hard to say, it really speaks to Gen Alpha too. I don't know if it was intended to because everyone, across all generations get acne, but it does sort of make it playful, makes it educational, kind of helps them learn about skincare. Was that a part of the process at all? And are you guys thinking about Gen Alpha, who is rising in terms of youth culture?
It's something that we want to explore more, but it is definitely something that we're going to do carefully. Also, in some jurisdictions, is something that we just can't touch altogether because of regulations. But we don't want to recommend products to young people just because of their purchasing power or growing purchasing power. We want to recommend products that they actually need, that they will actually benefit from, that will target concerns that they do have. And I feel like our products are not really like conducive of buying it just because it looks cute. All the bottles are very minimal. It's all white and black, and that's what we're about. So usually when young people come to us, they come to us with a specific need, right? Some might come to us through a viral video. For example, our sitting in barrier support serum went minimally viral on TikTok because it's bright pink. I think that's one of the few products that we do have that is bright pink. Thankfully, it was a barrier supporting serum, which I find that a young person can definitely benefit from. Anyone can benefit from a bit of hydration. But beyond that, we do carry a lot of products that are not age appropriate for younger people. So it's really our responsibility to educate them and their parents as well, I think.
When you look at the beauty industry over the next 5 to 10 years, what do you think sort of new trends will emerge in terms of how we communicate information and science and just fact as the beauty industry is set to just absolutely grow?
I always say that I see a return of the long form content. People have been so tired of being sold a product in a 30-second little video that says absolutely nothing. The rise of Substack is a sign that people are ready to read, to do some reading. So I'm really excited about that because I like to write a lot and I like to create long form content. So I really hope that people are ready to engage with that. But we also need to look at what's happening currently with AI and generative content that's being created. So, a lot of that long form content may be AI generated, and a lot of the times, specific AI models might not use sources that are reliable. So I'm excited for the long form content. I'm scared that a lot of it might not be accurate and scientifically sound. And there are AI models designed to digest science by scientists for scientists, but those are not the ones that the general non-scientific person is using, right? And when I'm using an AI model that is not designed for scientists, I don't use them basically for nothing because it's just a lot of the times the results that I get in 2 seconds, I can tell that there's so much inaccuracy and so much information that is taken from unreliable sources that it's just not good at all.
If you could redesign the beauty industry from scratch, what is one thing you would do differently?
I would start at a regulatory level, I have to say. I do feel that we've evolved in a way in terms of scientific research, technologies that we can put in products, knowledge that we have, scientific knowledge that we have, that a lot of the times the regulations are just not keeping up with. We're not able to, educate the consumers in the best way possible, oftentimes because of regulatory limitations. We're not able to include certain ingredients that are super beneficial when topically applied because of regulatory limitations. So I would start at a regulatory level and bring, first and foremost, a consensus, global consensus, because all of the different countries' regulations are so limiting, and making sure that those new regulations are up to date with all of the new scientific developments that we've achieved.
And then just what's a piece of content that you've worked on throughout your almost 10-year journey at the company that you feel perhaps most proud of or was scientifically sound and you want to kind of share it?
I feel that if my baby, the one that I will always be the most proud of, is the Everything is Chemicals campaign. That was basically my internship idea when I very first started at Decium. I told our chief brand officer, Dion, that we should do a video based on this preposterous article that I read saying that a retailer was moving towards a chemical-free future. And everything is chemicals. There's no such thing as a chemical-free future because we are walking, talking bags of chemicals. So I said, oh, let's just do a little video. And she said, no, let's do a whole campaign. And this is the beauty of The Ordinary, is that sometimes ideas and things that are super disruptive and that other brands would perhaps be scared to say, we are going to say it and we're going to take it all the way. We're not just going to do a little bit of noise about it. We're going to make a lot of noise about it. So we did a whole campaign. We did a video. We did educational content for social media, all with this kind of desire to educate the consumer around the safety of formulations and ingredients, to basically tell them that the responsibility of ensuring their safety should not be on them. They shouldn't be looking at a list of ingredients to avoid. That responsibility belongs to brands to ensure that products are safe, and to regulators that put regulations in place to make sure that these products are maintained safe. So it was super cool to do, and to tell people that they should not be afraid of chemicals, that they should not be afraid of cosmetic products. It was definitely really cool.
I think that just confirms that you were probably a really great hire if that was your internship idea. Like always, I ask all of my guests, who is someone that you admire that's creating a new version of tomorrow that you find really inspiring? It could be a person, a brand, somebody in your own personal life. Who is your pick?
I think that unfortunately that person is no longer with us, but I do have to say our late founder, Brandon Truex. I'm not even saying this just because I work for the company. I'm saying because the fact that The Ordinary existed was the reason why I decided to study cosmetic science. The year that The Ordinary launched, I decided that I was going to study cosmetic science. And the way that he did things was that he was told he couldn't do 10 things at once, and he decided to do exactly that. And Decium is Latin, deca, Latin for 10. That's where the name comes from. And The Ordinary was the 11th brand that he opened. I think this vision of disrupting the beauty industry or any industry in general, of radical transparency just for the sake of the consumer, I think it was really revolutionary. And I truly wish that there were more leaders in the corporate world like him, because we need more of that. We need that radical transparency, and we need that shift to maintain this world moving forward.
Thank you to my guest, Rita Silva, Senior Manager, Scientific Communications and Brand Engagement at beauty brand Decium. If you're a WGSN subscriber, look out for more trends at WGSN.com. If you're not a subscriber, please come and discover our services. We'll be back with our next episode soon. In the meantime, you can catch the CEO of WGSN, Carla Buzashi, on our other podcast, Lives of Tomorrow. I'm your host, Cassandra Napoli. Be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast, and see you next time.